Dr. Mike and I are going to do another prisoner exchange today. This time it's my turn. I'm going to unleash him on Joe's Garage Act 1 because I'm a nice guy. Didn't want to hit him with a triple album set, but Acts 2 and 3 will come his way sometime in the future. Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly, Kelly, on Instagram, Threads, and X.
I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything, including Threads. I don't know how to use it, but I'm on there. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Tell us your favorite Zappa songs, your favorite songs off Joe's Garage, what albums you'd like to see us talk about, or if you have a recommendation for us to talk about, that would be great. Leave all of those as separate comments because that helps the algorithm. You know what? While you're doing it, do it wearing one of our t-shirts. Check out that merch store. And once you're done, drift off to the soothing sounds of our voice on Hard No. It's the world's shortest podcast, so you can knock out like 1,000,000 episodes that don't even exist yet of it while you sleep.
Most definitely. Yep. It's short. Still working on our tagline, but
you'll hardly feel it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna stick with it short. So we're as a reminder to folks, because it has been a while since Mike and I have done the prisoner exchanges. These are the prisoner exchange musicals, and so we pick albums that
like musicals.
We pick albums that we're passionate about, that we think that the other person is either totally unfamiliar with or maybe just vaguely familiar with, and do a deeper dive on there. And so it's been a fun ride. I've gone into lots of different stuff as each of us bring in different things. So I'm hoping this was an enjoyable experience for you, because I don't really recall, are you a big Zappa guy? We've really not talked much about him in the past.
We haven't talked too much Zappa, so I do like Zappa, but he's one of those artists, kind of like Prince, who I'll mention once we get to a certain point in this, kind of like Prince, where he's got like a huge catalog and it's very diverse. So in Zappa's case, I'm not familiar with all of it. I'm a huge fan of the Hot Rats album, and then there's a couple other albums I own, and I know some sporadic other stuff. So I was aware of this album, not super familiar with it though.
Yeah, it came out in two releases: Joe's Garage Act 1, which was in September of 1979. And then just 2 months later, in October, Acts 2 and 3 came out. And so it is a 3-act story, a significantly more coherent story than Thingfish, which is I have the vinyl box set of Thingfish, featuring many of the same performers that are on Joe's Garage, but as the kind of lucid's maybe too strong a word for Joe's Garage, but there's a storyline that you can hang with pretty easily. I mean, it has its quirks and turns to it, but Thingfish is conversation for another day, because it's crazy. But Ike Willis plays a role big in each of them. In Joe's Garage, his vocals are one of the reasons I just love this album. But uncomfortably, we always kind of begin our album discussions with the cover. Joe's Garage Act 1 and Acts 2 and 3, when it released, both have covers that I find hard to believe would make it out as a release today, because he's wearing blackface. So there's
Okay,
that.
so I'm glad I wasn't even going to mention this. It is blackface that he's wearing.
Yeah, it
Because I couldn't tell
is.
if that's what it. So talking about the cover right off the bat, even though I wasn't as familiar with this album, I knew about this album. I remember seeing this album in stores. Stores are where you used to go, where Spotify, they would make like hard copies of it and put it on vinyl and CDs and stuff in record stores. So I remember seeing this album all the time. This is one, again, Zappa's got tons of albums, but this is one I feel like every store had in their Zappa section. they would have the Joe's Garage. The full, volumes 1, 2, and 3 set was pretty much a staple of record stores when I was a kid. And I wasn't sure if it was meant to be blackface or if it's meant to be like he's working in a garage and just has grease smeared on his face, which still
Um,
kind of looks like blackface the way that it's done.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's blackface. I mean, there is a definite, and Zappa does I mean, so his musically he's all over the place in terms of he'll do like jazz influence stuff, more experimental stuff, early Mother stuff, very experimental. Um, but particularly kind of in the latter half of his career, he would end up pairing himself with some amazing uh, African American singers. Ike Willis on this one just kills it. Napoleon Murphy Brock was another individual that played saxophone, but also was a great vocalist. Ray White was another one there, and so somehow I just get the sense that he felt he was hip enough and cool enough and was honoring the music that it'd be kind of okay for him to do it. It's kind of my read on it. I think a poor choice. I think it's the worst thing about the album is the cover. Because it's a shame too, because I really of his works I like it. It's not, I mean, there's huge amounts of some tremendous guitar work in here.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of it on Act One. You get a lot more of it in Acts 2 and 3, and some of them were what they'd be doing is pulling from live performances. Some of the guitar work would become from actual live performances, uh, modified a little bit in the studio, but kind of folded in there as well. Um, so pretty creative there. But yeah, not a big fan of the cover. But it's him with his face either covered in grease because he works in the garage, or for some other reason holding him up. And
When I first saw it as a kid, it was just he's got grease on his face, and then of course as I got a little older, I saw it as blackface. So I never knew which way it was intended to be.
yeah, I've like never, seen like absolutely definitive evidence to say, oh yeah, that's blackface. But I'm going that way until someone maybe in the comments you can square me away and let me know where I'm wrong here. But let's quit talking about the cover and start talking
Yeah.
about the music. Before we get to the music, though, the first track on it is actually, well, there is a little bit of a backing track to it. Right off the gate, we're introduced to the narrator of this epic, the central scrutinizer. Now, kind of one of the big themes running through this is PMRC time. I mean, it was just starting to pick up speed. People, so kind of this a little bit of the censorship and government overreach and all that is something that Mr. Zappa did not care for, and would find ways to kind of skewer whether it was record executives, big pop bands, or governmental agencies, or a little bit of Scientology in Acts 2 and 3. They get a pretty big shot as well. So, but a lot of this is around kind of Orwellian authority, bad. And the kingpin of Orwellian authority here is the central scrutinizer, who kind of sets the stage of the story we're going to hear. So, what did you think as you got into this start? And the first track is called the Central Scrutinizer, where we get to meet him, which is Zappa through a mildly mechanically augmented sound.
So first and foremost, like you said, this is an album that's kind of skewering the popular music at the time while also being an album of the popular music at the time, putting in some dystopian sci-fi kind of elements and all. As different as our recent recommendations to each other were, I do think there is similarities thematically between them, because you have artists who are kind of dedicated to mocking the thing that they're doing, that they're a part of, and there are obvious sci-fi dystopian influences in there as well. So that's kind of interesting that
Yeah.
as different as these sound, they're kind of coming from a similar place in some ways. This song in particular, though, I actually really liked this song. It reminds me a lot. I said I was going to mention Prince. This reminds me a lot of a Prince song. One of my favorite Prince tracks is Chlorine Bacon Skin, which is a 15-minute song that is predominantly just Prince and Morris Day playing bass and drums, respectively, at a very loose kind of live jam session that they cut up and turned into a studio track, similar to the kind of stuff you were talking about. But instead of a normal vocal, it's Prince doing this spoken word character over top of it, very much like this. In the case of Chlorine Bacon Skin, it's a very expletive filled rant that he's going on about an ex girlfriend of his or of the characters. But it 100% put me in mind of that. If we ever do like a Prince Prisoner Exchange, I probably wouldn't do that album because it's off of a triple album that clocks in at over 3 hours. So I probably wouldn't do that album. But if we ever do like a playlist exchange, that song would definitely be on there. And I'd be curious to see if you hear the similarities between them.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like I might. But as Central Scrutinizer wraps up, he kind of lets us know we're going to hear the tale of Joe and the problems that music causes and running afoul of the government. So we learn that Joe is in a band and they want to make it big. And so Joe's Garage, their garage band, it's where they practice. And so you get the title track here, which is Joe's Garage, which is, I think, one of the best songs Frank Zappa's ever written. This is where Ike Willis just kills it vocally. It's wistful in a lot of ways. It's just kind of cool. It's got the kind of quirky stuff as they kind of talk about the kind of we'd all come over and play a song that went, and they kind of pick the Joe's guitar riff there, and pretty cool. And then Denny Wally towards the end makes an appearance as first a Karen, so a grumpy old lady across the street wants them to turn the music down, and Denny's got the voice to pull off an angry older neighbor really well. So what do you think of Joe's Garage?
I mean, this is probably my favorite song off of this set. One of my favorite Frank Zappa songs easily. This is the one I knew going into it. I had heard this song before. I absolutely love the vocals on this song. I wasn't, again, not being super familiar with this album. I wasn't positive who sang on it. Or at least sang the lead vocal on it. But love this song. I think it's a great song. I think what's important too, because I knew there was a concept to the album, but not sitting down and listening to it start to finish before. I didn't know if it was one of those concept albums that was loose in the way that Lace and Whiskey is from Alice Cooper, where it's just kind of like a general vibe of the album that's mostly created in the artwork, or if this was going to be a literal storytelling kind of record. And it's the latter. This is exactly how you should do that, is this song, because it does introduce characters and move the story along, but you can just pluck this song out and just listen to it as a great song. And that's really, I think, where a lot of concept records fail for me, because they're usually one or the other, not both.
Yeah, I mean, this really, and I talked about how as good as this one is at, while it is still a very unique storyline in terms of what's going on, it's definitely one you can follow. It takes you to some interesting places as you follow it, but you're not eventually trying to connect. It's not like The Wall where there's the Wall's tighter. You go Lace and Whiskey is the example of one to say, well, these are all kind of sort of related a little bit maybe, so it's not that loose. The Wall, much more continuity to it. Bob Ezrin's hand is in it that I think helps pull that together. But this one is, we'll call it a Broadway production, Broadway play kind of thing, but there is a much clearer storyline here, and we're getting characters that you're going to continue to check in with throughout the album. So speaking of which, the next key character is Mary. Joe's a girlfriend for a bit, and Mary happens to be a Catholic girl, and so of course we have to have a song called Catholic Girls. part of this, I think, was Zappa. Um, he had gotten a lot of heat. The Shake Your Booty album was the album just prior, which at some point maybe another Prisoner Exchange one, because that's got some truly intriguing stuff on it. But Jewish Princess was on Shake Your Booty, and the Anti Defamation League wasn't too happy with his song there, and he's like, relax, don't worry, I'm going after the Catholics next. So he does with kind of equal vigor, and kind of a bouncy little number. Um, uh, that gets into, and this one wasn't as bad. So you'll get the song kind of goes through structurally, is doing its show, and then there's this like break where all of a sudden Ike gets kind of lounge singery for a while, which totally kind of inconsistent with the rest of it. And it, to me, it works in this song. It's an odd juxtaposition that it happens, but it still works. This is the first indication of what's going to come more often later in some Zappa stuff, like Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch and Man from Utopia, where he leans into this big break into a sing-songy voice thing that it is that I don't enjoy nearly as much as in this one here. So I think it works in Catholic Girls, and it was I think just looking to balance the scorecard, have both the Jewish folks and the Catholic folks mad at him. So I think
Get
he was
everybody
probably
mad.
successful.
It's the only way to do it.
Yep.
It's the only way to be fair.
Equal opportunity offender. What do you think of Catholic Girls, sir?
So I like this song. Again, I was like you had mentioned, we're going into some different stuff vocally now. So I'm a big fan of, and I'm much more familiar with the catalogs as in comparison to Frank Zappa. I'm a big fan of the bands Ween and Primus, who I've mentioned on here before. Big fan of both of those bands. Obviously, I've always known they're obviously very influenced by Zappa. They're very technical bands with a lot of strange conceptual songs and things like that, obviously influenced by people like him. This song though is where you can really hear it the most, and sort of the changes in the vocals and the different voices and things. You can really hear a lot of that stuff in Ween and Primus songs. So this is where it's the most apparent. Even if you were just a very casual listener, you would pick up on it.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. So we're going to end this next song on the vinyl version would have been the end of side one. So the last song on side one and the first song on side two is, I'd kind of made this recommendation to Mike, and then I was getting back and getting refreshed on. And I go, oh, here comes the section of the album that's going to speak to Mike. so the next two songs I thought there'd get a lot of enjoyment out of. Cruise Slut is our next song. Where the central scrutinizer reappears, starts to fill us in a little bit on Mary's a bit fallen at this point in time, is kind of running in with the wrong crowd. And she's starting to fall in with the wrong crowd, as the central scrutinizer tells us. And the band is called Toto, TOAD-O, but it's Toto. I think the allegory he's making to is Toto. Oddly enough, as this has been re-released down the road, and I don't know whether it was, there seems to be some disagreement on whether it was Zappa didn't like the titles, or whether they're looking just to try and not let the behemoth that is the Toto legal apparatus come after him. This got changed to On the Bus. Was what the song is on future on. Probably if you go out and grab a version of Joe's Garage today, Act One, it's going to be packaged with 2 and 3 already, and this is probably going to be called On the Bus versus Total Line. Excuse me. This is gonna, but he mentions Toto in this song. That's the crew. Total Line comes up later on the next track there, but so that's kind of the Toto connection. But it I like Zappa a lot. I do think he makes sharp observations. I think he was a brilliant guy. I think a lot of the stuff was good, but I also think he's got a mean streak, and and I just kind of felt, that you get little hints of that in this song in terms of um, people who might be hangers on with bands on Cruise Slut. But it's a bouncy little number, and but there's some really creepy vocal interjections from Zappa around, "Hey, you'll love it," and the kind of stuff there that I was just a little, let's move along here. So, but a fun song, and I thought a song might speak to you. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of songs out there, and probably even by this time, there was probably already a decent catalog of groupie centric themed songs. I definitely see what you're saying. I don't know if I would have articulated it as well as you did, but there was definitely something that was kind of nagging at me about the song, where there was kind of a weird vibe or weird tone to it, and I definitely agree with that. It almost seems like when you said mean streak, like maybe this isn't just a general mocking groupie lifestyle thing, but maybe this is aimed at a specific person or people that he had in mind when he wrote it.
Yeah, it seems like there might be some. It seems like there's an edge behind this, more so because it's just really digs in hard a few times,
Yeah.
and I mean it's kind of I mean, I get where he was going with it in terms of interjecting, but it just kind of seems at some points like, wow, he's all in.
It seems like it's more pointed
Yeah.
than just making an observation would normally be.
Yeah.
So I would definitely wonder after you said that, like, it was this inspired by a specific person or a specific situation. But I enjoyed the song.
Yep. It's a fun song. And, speaking of observations, what better to observe than wet t-shirt night? So side two opens up with a wet t-shirt night, with the, unforgettable chorus, big ones, wet ones, big wet ones. Is the very interesting delivery. So this is Zappa's scatological often in his music. The Crew Slut and Wet T-shirt night kind of explore that territory a little bit, but it is kind of continuing the story on a little bit, kind of a fun little number. It's not, to me, any of the hints of mean spiritedness that were in Crew Slut aren't really as much. It's much more observational, I think, or commentary on Wet T-shirt night. But an interesting way to start side two. Your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, as we already said, this is clearly a concept record. So obviously it's a direct continuation, but it feels like they're coupled together. It definitely feels like a part one and part two. I don't know if you could separate them entirely, if they would work as well on their own, but that's not really taking anything away from them either. I agree. This one sounds a little less, a little more generalized, a little more observational than the last one did. Are you a city pop guy at all?
No.
So city pop is this weird genre of Japanese music. Um, it's probably best known here for like 80s and early 90s anime movies and shows would use city pop music.
Okay.
Basically, what it is it's Japanese bands playing their interpretation of what they thought American music would be based on like pictures of America and movies and things like that, not emulating actual Western or American music, but sort of what their interpretation of it is based off the visuals of America, if that makes sense, particularly 80s America, like neon and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's weird. It's a genre that I never really liked as a kid seeing in anime movies, but as I got older and started like playing music, I could really appreciate how good the bands were and how good the musicians behind it were. Particularly there's a band called Piper that I'm a big fan of, and they have a great album called Summer Breeze, which would definitely be probably a future Prisoner Exchange record at some point. This at points almost feels like something that could be off of one of their records musically. There's also some xylophone in this, and I'm a big xylophone fan. And my xylophone tastes are not formed in the usual ways, like from movie scores or classical music, but from the band Cypress Hill.
Okay.
who
Fair
heavily
enough.
use xylophones in their music, but they use them in sort of a distorted background kind of way, which gives it kind of this creepy, ominous kind of thing to it. So it put me in mind of a weird mix of Piper and Cypress Hill, which I really liked.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ruth Underwood has toured with Zappa's various iterations of Zappa's bands forever. And she was a percussionist, uh, did some major xylophone time. Present here, present on Live at the Roxy, a lot of other stuff too, where a lot of Zappa's stuff will have, it's not an orchestra kind of, but he is more of a composer in a lot of his stuff. So when you get into the heavier instrumental stuff, there's sometimes a role for the xylophone, and he used it up, and it it does a good makes a good appearance here, and it's fun. So now to kind of clear up my earlier confusion, the central scrutinizer back in Crew Slut did mention Toto, but the song Toto Line is now the next. It's the track that follows what T-shirt night. That's the one that's now known as On the Bus. So Crew Slut is always Crew Slut. Toto Line has become On the Bus. This is one of the ones where heavy instrumental. We got a little central scrutinizer in as well, some other pieces there, but it's the biggest piece. When we get into acts 2 and 3, there's much larger expanses of. There's some lyrical content to most of the songs, but there's huge amounts of guitar, and it's down to, like, I think Act 3 is like 4 songs, two on each side of the album. But this is kind of the first hint of some of that to come. Some great guitar stuff on here. More to come in Acts 2 and 3, and it's just kind of continuing on. We've got Mary. Mary falls in with the wrong crowd. She's kind of hanging out with the big pop group. And Total Line is just kind of the continuation of that story. And at this point, Joe, having lost Mary to the wiles of a big pop band, ends up falling in love with a lady named Lucille, who we'll hear more about in a second. But Total Line is, like I said, pretty heavily, good guitar based number, instrumental, and a really good song. It is, if there wasn't some of this heavy hitting stuff that comes in Acts 2 and 3, say this is the standout guitar thing. Does that mean Zappa's a tremendous guitarist? So this is great, and there's just even better stuff coming in the next 2 albums.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just to call back real quick to the Wet T-shirt song, I forgot to mention mammalian protuberances.
Yes.
Forgot, didn't get a chance to mention that. Not a lyric I've ever heard in another song.
Nope.
So throw that out there. As far as this song though, like Kelly said, this is definitely the most guitar driven that we're hearing on this, as far as like solos and things like that. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the Hot Rats album. So this is the first song that felt like it could have been on that album.
Yeah.
From
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah. So we mentioned that Joe fell for this lady named Lucille, and she had a lot of presents to give Joe, which included a problem that Joe fills us in with the old Frank Sinatra classic, "Why Does It Hurt When I Pee?" So, super fun vocal by Ike Willis on this as well. Um, it's just hard not to get a little chuckle and have fun with and the song's called "Why Does It Hurt When I Pee?" But so I I shouldn't chuckle as much as I do. Shouldn't find song as funny as I do, but I do. I just like it. I'm a 3-year-old, but it was kind of a fun little ditty there. But and just very some dramatic vocals by Ike, and "Why Does It Hurt When I Pee?"
Yeah, my only note on this song is we've all been there. um, This is a song I had fun with it because of my sophomore sense of humor. This is a song immediately, I maybe halfway through the song, my thought to myself was, I can't wait to put this on in the background when there's a bunch of people in the house. And
Yep.
just play this in the background.
Yeah, it's a good icebreaker.
Yeah. I like doing that. I like putting on songs that make people feel uncomfortable when there's a group of people and they're just not sure how to react to it. This will slide perfectly into such a playlist.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little ditty on volume 2 that I think you'll want to kind of put on a loop with this. And so you'll be able to to do all right there. But so I don't think I've mentioned so far Mary. So Ike is Joe. Mary is Dale Bazio. So and in fact, Dale, Warren Cucurulo, and Vinnie Calaluta uh all would depart this merry band a little bit after Joe's Garage to form a little band called Missing Persons, along with her husband at the time, Terry Bozzio, who is the drummer for most of this album, and will be the featured vocalist in the companion piece to Why Does It Hurt When I Pee that we can talk about in a future Prisoner Exchange. Um, but yeah, I think this will make people uncomfortable. But it's fun, And in terms of, if you're going to sing about why does it hurt, this is actually just, I think, one of the funner songs to listen to, even if you kind of, if there was different lyrical content, this is still a fun, structured song and delivered great. And again, some outstanding vocal work by Ike. So good stuff. Um, but so we close off Act One. Joe and Mary have kind of gone their separate ways. Joe fell in with Lucille. Felt like a little bit of a convenient stretch to say, oh, by the way, this person's name was Lucille, because I think there was the song Lucille Has My Mind Messed Up, ready to go. So it's like, okay, so this person needs to be Lucille. So I think that's kind of how she got her name. But it is a more straightforward song. Uh, and but it kind of an interesting way to end the album, or end Act One. There's continuity to it, but it's probably the most straightforward song on the album, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's the most straightforward sounding. Again, it feels like it's there to, push the story along further. If you were just listening to this on its own, because so my introduction to this at, like, as far as seeing it in stores and things, Act One, Two, and Three were always packaged together. It's the way that I always saw them. I know that's not how it was originally released, but that's the way it's usually presented now. And if you go on streaming platforms, that's how it is. It's Act One, Two, and Three all together. Um, I don't know if this would work as well for me if this is where it ended, like Act One, especially if I didn't know there was a two and three out there. Like if I just stumbled across this somehow and it was just Act One, it's probably fine in the context of listening to all three acts together as one giant, garage rock opera kind of thing. I don't know if it would have landed the same way though if this was just ending Act One for me.
Yep. I agree. I actually, so when kind of this was coming out and stuff, is it wasn't clear if, every once in a while you'll see something come out and they'll say it's part one, and then the future ones never surface. So at the time I had Act One, I didn't know where it was going to necessarily go, didn't notice, and then, or when the other ones would be showing up, they showed up obviously pretty quickly. And uh, it it is much better as a set. I think as an album, as a collection of songs, it's, I think, very serviceable as is. But as a story being told, it does a great job in taking you along a narrative path. But does there's no it's not a there's no clear ending here. It's, it just, it's kind of, that part would be a little frustrating. So it's really benefits by 2 and 3 elevate the whole work.
Yeah, this I like it knowing that 2 and 3 are coming.
Yep.
But if I didn't know, like if I was there when this came out, was a Zappa fan, I just bought this and didn't know if there was going to be an act 2 to this, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much, but like I have the hindsight of, oh look, next on Spotify act 2 starts.
There you go. Cool. So what do you think overall, sir?
I really enjoyed it. It definitely makes me want to delve deeper into Zappa than I have up until this point.
Yeah, I think, and I was so far, I enjoyed, there's some times where it's kind of some sophomoric humor and type of thing that Zappa's kind of noted for doing. But it's still, I find it a lot of, there's some tremendous music, there's some tremendous guitar work. Like, as I can't go, like, I'm not going on and on about Ike Willis, but he just nails it. So
Oh yeah, he's definitely excellent.
he's just does an outstanding job. So it was really good. So I was so excited when this got done, and then down the road, Thingfish came out, and it had Ike as the main vocalist. Dale Bazio was back as the female lead in it. Napoleon Murphy Brock was in it. Another really, really strong performer. I don't remember if Ray White was part of this or not, but I was like, okay, man, this is that killer lineup. This is going to be something else. And then I can't, I don't even know what to say about Thingfish.
See,
it,
I'm not familiar with that one at all.
it,
So that'll be an interesting.
it's strange. It's very, very strange. But this one, Joe's Garage brings a smile to my heart. I just in and of itself, just the title track, Joe's Garage, is just such a great piece of music that, if nothing else, if you don't want to delve through the whole album, maybe you don't want to hear about a wet t-shirt contest, maybe you don't want to hear about urination pain, get it. Still listen to Joe's Garage because it's a great song.
And again, we've all been there.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.